There she was. Karen, standing at the edge of my lake, screaming like she just found a body floating in it. Her voice cut through the air like a car alarm, loud and shrill, waking up half the neighborhood. She had one hand on her hip, the other pointed right at me like I was some criminal. All I had done was install a simple lock on the gate that leads to my lake. Not the neighborhood's, not the HOA's. Mine. But judging by the way she was losing her mind, you'd think I'd just stolen Christmas. I just stood there for a second, not even mad, just confused. Like, was this real life? Did she really think she could control something that didn't belong to her? She kept shouting about community property and calling the police, while I was still holding the drill in my hand, halfway through tightening the last screw. Honestly, it was kind of impressive how fast she went from 0 to meltdown. 1 second, peace and quiet. The next, it's like a tornado in yoga pants with a fake clipboard. All I could do was blink, then laugh. Because this was peak Karen behavior. The type of drama you only see in Facebook group horror stories or Reddit threads titled HOA Nightmare. Except now, I was living it. And she? She was the main character. I've lived in this house for a little over 7 years. It's quiet, it's got a decent backyard, and best of all, it came with access to a small private lake that sits right behind my property. When I bought the place, that lake was one of the main reasons. I pictured peaceful evenings by the water, maybe some fishing, grilling on weekends, just relaxing without anyone bothering me. And for the most part, it was like that. Until the HOA and Karen started getting in the way. Now, the HOA's always been a bit annoying, but manageable. You know, sending those little letters about maintaining the aesthetic standards of the neighborhood. Translation: your grass is 2 inches too tall, or your garden gnome is facing slightly the wrong direction. I once got a warning because the color of my mailbox clashed with the community palette. Whatever that means. But Karen? She took things to another level. She wasn't just a member of the HOA. She acted like she was the HOA. Self-appointed queen of the block, clipboard and all. She'd constantly stop by my place, usually uninvited, to complain about something dumb. The way I parked my truck, the fact that I had a fire pit. One time she even told me my bird feeder was a violation of wildlife balance. I kid you not. But what really pushed it was her attitude toward the lake. She'd treat it like it was a public park, not someone's private land. I'd catch her and her little HOA buddies fishing, grilling, even letting their kids run around my dock like it was theirs. And if I said anything, she'd act like I was the one trespassing. So yeah, I had been patient. I had tried to ignore it, brush it off. But after years of this nonsense, something had to give. That lake was mine, and I was finally going to lock it down. And I knew. Deep down, I'd be hearing from Karen the second I did. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I finally decided I'd had enough. I went out there with my tools and started installing a simple metal gate and a lock. Nothing crazy, just something to keep random people from wandering onto my lake like it was part of a public park. I was halfway through tightening the hinges when I heard that voice. That high-pitched, overly dramatic voice that I had come to dread. "You can't do that!" she screamed from across the lawn. And sure enough, there was Karen, speed walking toward me like she was about to break up a crime in progress. She stopped right at the edge of my property, hands on her hips, sunglasses on, the whole act. "That lake is community property," she shouted, as if volume made her right. "You have no right to block it off." I just stared at her for a second, blinking like an NPC in a video game. In my head, I was thinking, here we go. She's really doing this. She's actually mad that I'm locking up land that I own. Honestly, it was hard not to laugh. Trying not to roll my eyes into another dimension, I calmly walked over, pulled out my phone, and opened the PDF of my property deed. "This says otherwise," I told her, holding it up like it was a golden ticket. "This lake, this dock, this land, all mine. It's been mine since the day I bought the house." She didn't even read it, just gave it a quick glance and started shaking her head like a toddler refusing to eat broccoli. "That can't be right," she muttered. "This lake has always been for the neighborhood." Then came the cherry on top. She reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and said, "If you don't take that lock off right now, I'm calling the police." I crossed my arms and told her, "Go ahead." In my head, I was wondering what exactly she thought the cops would do. Arrest me for putting a gate on my own land? But Karen, as always, had no interest in logic. She was in full meltdown mode, and this was just the beginning. Karen didn't even flinch when I told her to go ahead and call the cops. She acted like she was doing the world a favor. She stepped back, tapped her phone, and actually called 911. Right there, standing in my yard like she was reporting a bank robbery. "Yes, I'd like to report a crime," she said, loud enough for me to hear every word. "My neighbor is illegally blocking access to a community lake. He built a fence and locked it. It's completely unfair, and he's refusing to take it down." The way she spoke, you'd think I had barricaded the town's only water supply. I just leaned against my truck, watching her spin her fantasy like she was auditioning for a soap opera. About 10 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up. 2 officers got out, and the look on their faces said it all. They weren't thrilled to be here. One of them rubbed his forehead like he already had a headache. "All right," he sighed. "Who called us?" Karen marched right up, practically dragging him toward my gate, throwing her hands around like she was explaining a major scandal. "He locked the lake. He's trying to keep everyone out. That lake has always been part of the community," she said, her voice climbing higher with every word. The officer turned to me, clearly waiting to hear my side. I didn't say much, just handed him my phone with the deed pulled up. He took one look at it, let out the smallest sigh, and turned back to her. "Ma'am," he said, already sounding tired. "This property belongs to him. He's within his rights to install a fence. The HOA doesn't have authority over private land." Karen's mouth dropped open like she had just been slapped with a wet towel. "That can't be right," she snapped. "The rules clearly say—" "The rules don't apply here," the officer cut in. "You can't force someone to open private land to the public." She stood there frozen for a second, then did what Karen always does, doubled down. "This isn't over," she hissed, pointing a finger at me before storming off like she was plotting her next move. And in that moment, I knew she wasn't done. Not even close. The next morning, I woke up feeling good. After everything that happened the day before, I figured that was the end of it. Karen got shut down by the cops, the gate was locked, and for once, things felt peaceful. I grabbed my coffee, stepped outside, and went to admire my work. But when I got to the fence, I stopped cold. Something was off. At first I thought maybe I was just seeing it wrong. But no. The gate was gone. Not broken. Not open. Gone. Like it had been scooped up and carried off in the middle of the night. For a few seconds, I just stood there staring at the empty space where it used to be. The posts were still there. The ground still showed where the hinges had been. But the whole gate? Vanished. I slowly turned in a circle, like maybe it had been moved somewhere nearby, but nope. It didn't just fall. Someone had taken it. That's when it clicked in my head. Karen. I went back inside, pulled up the security footage, and sure enough, there she was, caught red-handed. It was around 2 a.m., and the camera clearly showed Karen and two of her little HOA buddies sneaking into my yard. They had gloves, bolt cutters, a flashlight, the whole deal. They moved fast, like they'd planned it out ahead of time. One cut the lock, the other two pulled the gate off the hinges, and together they just walked off with it, like it was some community service mission instead of straight-up theft. I watched the footage, half shocked and half laughing. I mean, who does that? Who gets told by the police to back off, and then decides to come back in the dead of night and steal private property like it's no big deal? Karen wasn't just entitled. She was completely off the rails. And if she thought I was going to let this go, she was way more delusional than I thought. This time I wasn't just going to sit back and fix it. I was calling the cops again. Only now I had proof. Real, solid, in-her-face proof. And things were about to get interesting. This time I was the one making the call. I didn't hesitate. I showed the cops the footage, told them exactly what happened, and asked them to come back out. It wasn't just trespassing anymore. This was theft, plain and simple. And the best part? I didn't even have to explain much. The same officer from the day before showed up, stepped out of the cruiser, took one look at me, and sighed. "Let me guess," he said. "Karen?" I nodded and handed him my phone with the video ready to go. He pressed play and stood there watching, and I could see his eyebrows rise about halfway through. He actually chuckled at one point. "She really brought backup for this?" he muttered, still watching as Karen and her little crew carefully carried the entire gate off, like it was a prize they'd won. When the video ended, he just shook his head and said, "All right, let's go have a chat with her." We walked over to her house together, and the second she opened the door and saw him, her whole face changed. You could see the fake surprise settle in. "Oh, officers. What a surprise." The cop didn't play along. "Ma'am, we have you on camera removing your neighbor's property. That's not just a misunderstanding. That's a crime." Karen tried to spin it, of course. Said the gate had been illegally installed, and she was just protecting the community. She actually said she thought she was doing the right thing. But the officer cut her off before she could even get into full ramble mode. "Who gave you the authority to decide that?" he asked. Karen's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, but she had nothing. She knew she was caught. Eventually, after realizing she had nowhere left to run, she stomped back inside and came out dragging the gate in pieces, dumping it at the edge of my yard like some kind of weird peace offering. "Here," she snapped, "take your stupid gate." The officer looked at me and asked, "Do you want to press charges?" I could have said yes. Honestly, I wanted to, but then I had a better idea. Something that would annoy her even more than getting arrested. So I smiled and said, "Nah. I've got something else planned." That night, right after the whole gate theft episode, I got to work. I wasn't about to let Karen win, not even a little. So I didn't just replace the gate, I upgraded it. This time it was heavier, stronger, and bolted down with steel brackets deep into the ground. But I didn't stop there. I added a little bonus feature just for her: motion-activated sprinklers, not the kind that gently water your flowers. These were the industrial kind, the ones meant for covering large areas with high pressure, and I aimed them directly at the front of the gate. By the next evening, everything was ready. I sat out on the porch with a coffee in one hand and the security camera feed on my phone. I didn't even have to wait long. Around 11:30 p.m., just like clockwork, Karen showed up. I saw her creeping through the yard, staying low, probably thinking I was asleep. She tiptoed towards the gate with her little flashlight and that same "I'm smarter than everyone" look on her face. She took one step too close. Click. The sprinkler system kicked on full blast, and the look of pure shock on her face was priceless. She let out this high-pitched scream, spun around, and ran like her life depended on it, soaking wet and slipping on the grass as she bolted back toward her house. I nearly dropped my coffee from laughing so hard I didn't even care about the mess. Watching her get nailed by freezing water in the dead of night was worth every second I spent setting it up. The best part? She couldn't do a thing about it. It was on my property, all perfectly legal, and the only way she'd trigger it again is if she came back where she wasn't supposed to be. Which, knowing Karen, wasn't off the table. But now, at least, I had a little surprise waiting if she tried. A few days after the sprinkler incident, just when I thought Karen might finally back off, a letter showed up in my mailbox. It had the HOA logo on the top and looked all official, like something you'd get from a lawyer. I opened it and immediately started laughing. Karen was at it again, this time using the HOA as her personal revenge tool. The notice listed 3 serious violations that apparently needed my immediate attention. Violation number 1: unauthorized water use that disrupts community harmony. Translation: she was still mad about the sprinklers that soaked her. Violation number 2: unapproved construction of a gate, creating obstruction to shared space. That would be the same gate I had rebuilt on my land after she and her little squad stole the first one. And the best one of all? Failure to comply with HOA rules regarding access to natural community resources. Yeah, she actually had the nerve to call the lake a shared resource again, like we hadn't already gone through this whole song and dance with the police. It was honestly hard to take seriously. She was clearly grasping at straws, trying to use the HOA to do what she couldn't get away with herself. But if she thought some fake violations were going to scare me, she was in for another surprise. I wasn't mad. I was ready. I spent the next few hours printing out everything I needed: my property deed, zoning laws, copies of past police reports, even the statement from the officer who had warned her about trespassing. I wasn't going to just defend myself. I was going to make it crystal clear that Karen and the HOA had zero power over me or my property. If she wanted to take this to the next level, I'd be there waiting with receipts, paperwork, and about 3 cups of coffee. She'd already messed with the wrong person. Now it was time to shut her down for good. A few days after the bogus violation letter, I got another notice, this time about an upcoming HOA meeting. Karen had requested it, and surprise, surprise, the main topic on the agenda was community concerns regarding private land misuse. It was obvious she was planning to use the meeting as her stage, and I was the show. Honestly, I couldn't wait. When I walked into the meeting room that evening, you could feel the tension. Karen was already standing at the front with a stack of papers, acting like she was about to uncover some neighborhood scandal. As soon as everyone settled in, she launched into her speech. "We have a serious issue on our hands," she said, pacing dramatically like she was in a courtroom. "One of our residents," she looked right at me, "has been repeatedly violating HOA rules, blocking access to shared property, and creating an environment of hostility." She flipped through her papers like she had evidence. But it was the same nonsense. Complaints about my gate, the sprinklers, and her favorite lie: that the lake was for everyone. A few neighbors nodded along, but most just looked confused or bored. Some of them were probably there just to see what mess Karen had stirred up this time. When she was finally done, I stood up, walked to the front without saying a word, and calmly laid down my stack of documents. First, I held up my property deed. "This is mine. The lake, the land around it, legally owned. Not community property, not part of HOA land." Then I pulled out the police statement confirming my right to build the gate, and showed printed screenshots from the security footage of Karen and her crew stealing it. You could hear a few gasps in the room, and even Karen's usual supporters started shifting in their seats. "And the sprinklers?" I added. They're on my side of the property line. The only way someone would get sprayed is if they're not supposed to be there. I looked right at Karen. So, unless you've got a good reason for being in my yard after midnight. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The HOA board turned to her, clearly done with her games. And just like that, the tide turned. It wasn't me they were questioning anymore. It was her. Once everyone in that room saw the proof, I knew I had her cornered. But I wasn't done yet. I pulled out one last paper, a draft of a lawsuit. I held it up and said, if this harassment doesn't stop, if I get one more fake violation or one more person trespassing on my land because of her, I'm filing this. I explained exactly what it covered: harassment, defamation, property damage. Everything Karen had pulled since day one was spelled out in writing. You could have heard a pin drop. The HOA president, a guy who looked like he'd aged 5 years just from listening to her speech earlier, took off his glasses and let out a long breath. He looked at Karen, then back at me, then finally said, "This has gone way too far." Karen jumped up, waving her hands like she was trying to swat away a swarm of bees. "You can't do this! He's lying! He's manipulating the whole board!" But nobody was listening anymore. One of the other members quietly said, "I think it's time we vote." And before she could say another word, hands started going up around the table. One by one, every single board member voted to remove her from her HOA position. No debate, no delay. Karen froze for a second like she couldn't believe it was actually happening. Then she slammed her stack of papers onto the table and yelled, "You'll regret this. I'll sue all of you," before storming out the door like she was auditioning for a reality show. As soon as she was gone, the room finally relaxed. A few people chuckled, some just shook their heads. I stood there with the biggest grin I'd worn in weeks. After everything, her threats, her lies, the fence, the stolen gate, she was finally out. I didn't just win, I ended it. And yeah, it felt really good. Things felt different after that meeting. Better. Calmer. Without Karen running around with her clipboard and her fake authority, the whole neighborhood seemed to breathe a little easier. The HOA even backed off a bunch of their pointless rules. Nobody cared about the color of someone's mailbox anymore, or if a garden gnome looked too aggressive. People actually started talking to each other like normal neighbors again, without the fear of being reported for some nonsense. I finally had the kind of peace I imagined when I first bought this place. No surprise visits, no angry letters taped to my door. No one trying to grill burgers on my dock without asking. Just quiet mornings, smooth coffee, and a lake that was all mine, exactly like it was supposed to be. One morning, not long after everything went down, I was sitting on my porch, same coffee in hand, just watching the water when I saw her. Karen. She was standing at the edge of the road, arms crossed, staring at the new reinforced gate like it had personally betrayed her. She didn't say anything, just stood there, squinting through the bars, completely shut out of the one thing she'd tried so hard to control. I took a slow sip from my mug, locked eyes with her from a distance, and gave her a little nod, raised the cup like a quiet toast. She huffed, turned on her heel, and walked off without a word. And just like that, the morning was quiet again. Finally. Remember when Karen screamed like I'd committed a crime just for locking my own gate? Yeah, good times. Now she just glares from a distance while I enjoy my coffee in peace. No yelling, no trespassing, no fake HOA rules taped to my door. Just quiet mornings and the sound of absolutely nothing. And that's how I reclaimed my peace, one Karen at a time. If you liked that mess, hit like, subscribe, and stick around, because something tells me she's not done yet.